The winds that howled through the crumbled remains of the northern ridge carried more than just dust. They carried echoes, of laughter that had long faded, of footsteps that no longer pressed the dirt, and of warnings unheeded. This place, once known as Red Pines Township, was now something else entirely. Survivors called it the Forgotten Zone, a place where rules broke down, but humanity clung to what little remained of itself. High atop an old broadcasting tower, Erin Carter scanned the horizon with a cracked pair of military-grade binoculars. Her fingers, wrapped in fingerless gloves, twitched with tension. She wasn't looking for help. She was making sure nothing, dead or otherwise, was heading their way. Behind her, tucked inside a barricaded community center, 99 others held their breath every hour of every day. The Forgotten Zone wasn't a sanctuary. It was a sentence. They hadn't chosen to be there. Most of them had simply made the mistake of surviving too long. Erin's radio hissed, and a voice cracked through the static. Northwatch to base. I've got motion, repeat, movement, 3 figures, northeast approach. Slow, maybe shamblers. She pressed the call button. Copy that, Northwatch. Visual confirmation. Negative. Dust storms thickening. Can't confirm if they're turned. Erin clicked off. 3 figures could mean trouble. It could also mean hope or a trap. In the Forgotten Zone, all 3 often came together. Inside the center, an old gymnasium converted into a temporary refuge throbbed with subdued tension. Makeshift bunks lined the walls, kids whispered under heavy blankets, and solar-powered lamps buzzed weakly. Food was running low. Morale was worse. Jackson Moore, once a teacher, now the closest thing the group had to a leader, leaned over a rough map scrawled on a weathered cafeteria table. Beside him sat Alina, a former paramedic, her leg bandaged and elevated after a recent run-in with a rusted fence. Across the table, Malik, their youngest scout at 16, chewed his lower lip as he reported. I saw someone watching us from the old library last night. Just one person, I think. They disappeared before I could follow. Jackson frowned. Could be a scavenger. Or worse, Alina muttered. They didn't need worse. Supplies had already been stretched thinner than a whisper. Fuel was almost gone. Ammo, rarer than forgiveness. And trust? That was the most endangered thing of all. As the storm outside gathered, the world beyond the barricaded windows disappeared under red haze and whirling ash. This wasn't a zombie horde they were preparing for, this was slow death. The kind that comes without teeth, without claws. The kind that starves and waits. But not everyone had given up. Back in the gym, Maya Ortega, once an engineering student, now the group's de facto systems tech, had wired together a signal booster from scrap radios and an old satellite dish. Every morning, she broadcasted a message into the static. This is Echo 9, transmitting from inside the Forgotten Zone. 100 survivors alive. We have children. We are not infected. We need aid. If you can hear us, respond. No one ever did. Erin came back down just before dusk. Her boots thudded softly on the stairs as she made her way to Jackson. 3 shapes. Still can't confirm. Could be survivors, or bait. Jackson stood. We wait till nightfall. If they're not infected, they'll use light. If they are, he didn't finish. That night, the zone held its breath. At 10:47 p.m., a faint glimmer appeared on the northeast ridge, barely visible through the haze. Then another. Flashlight. 3 short blinks, then 2 long. The code of the old world. The code of the living. Inside the gym, whispers sparked like fire. Maya rushed to decode the signal pattern. Malik leaned against the barricaded door, one hand on the old rifle they shared among shifts. Alina stared into the dark with something between hope and dread. Jackson watched the signal. They're trying to talk. But were they who they claimed to be? Send a return blink, Jackson ordered. Maya clicked her signal light, 3 long blinks, the code for identify. The response came instantly. 5 days without food. No infected. 3 alive. The Forgotten Zone had a choice to make. Let them in and risk infection, or leave them out and risk their humanity. Aaron looked around at the faces of the survivors. Children curled in the corners. Elders who couldn't run anymore. Fighters who were too tired to fight. We can't leave them out there, she said quietly. Jackson hesitated. If they're lying, it could kill all of us. But if they're not, Aaron's voice cracked. Then we become the monsters. He closed his eyes, then nodded. Gear up. We go out at dawn. As the group prepared, fear pulsed through them, but so did something else. Something dangerous. Something nearly forgotten. Hope. The dawn arrived in shades of orange and ash, casting long shadows across the jagged ruins outside the Forgotten Zone's barricade. The wind had calmed, but the dust still clung to the earth like a warning. Aaron tightened the strap on her backpack, checked her sidearm, only 2 rounds, and looked to Jackson, who stood by the gate with a worn axe in one hand and binoculars in the other. Still there? She asked. He nodded, eyes fixed on the distant ridge. They haven't moved. Crouched low, probably trying to stay hidden. Smart, Aaron murmured. Or scared. Malik approached, rifle slung awkwardly across his chest. He was young, but he was fast, and more importantly, he still believed in something bigger than just surviving. You really think they're uninfected? Jackson hesitated. We're about to find out. They moved as a group of 4, Aaron, Jackson, Malik, and Alina, who limped but refused to be left behind. The 5th, Maya, remained behind with strict instructions. If the 4 didn't return within 2 hours, seal the gates and don't open them again. The outside air bit at their lungs with every breath. The world beyond the walls was empty in a way that screamed. Buildings stood like gravestones. Cars sat half buried in sand, their windows long shattered. Nature hadn't reclaimed the Forgotten Zone, it had rejected it. They crossed the open plaza toward the northeast ridge where the light signals had come from. A broken supermarket sign creaked above them, Better Life Grocers, an old promise, faded and ironic now. Then, a soft sound. Not a groan. Not a shuffle. A whisper. Aaron raised her hand. They crouched behind a collapsed kiosk. Jackson pointed. 3 figures huddled beneath a collapsed freeway overpass, barely visible behind a crude barrier of trash bins and fencing. A man, thin as wire, held up a shaking hand in greeting. Beside him, a teenage girl, no older than 15, gripped a kitchen knife like it was her lifeline. The 3rd, a woman, lay curled on the ground, unconscious or worse. Stay here, Jackson whispered. He stepped forward slowly, arms raised. We saw your signal, he called out. We're not infected. Are you? The man straightened, eyes hollow but alert. No. We've been dodging those things for days. We ran out of food 3 nights ago. He gestured to the unconscious woman, collapsed yesterday. No bites. I swear it. Lift her sleeve, Aaron ordered as she joined them, gun lowered but ready. The man obeyed, rolling up the woman's tattered jacket. No bite. Just bruises and ribs showing through skin. Jackson looked to the girl. What's your name? Tyra, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You know what happens if you lie, he said gently. She nodded, then knelt by the woman. She's my mom. Malik moved in to help. We've got a place. It's not perfect, but it's safer than this. The man, who introduced himself as Ross, looked like he might cry. But he didn't. He just nodded. Lead the way. They moved fast, retracing their path back toward the Forgotten Zone. But the air had shifted. Even the silence felt more dangerous now. Alina was the first to notice it. We're being watched. They stopped near the old grocery store, eyes sweeping the rooftops. Nothing. But something felt off. That's when Aaron saw it. A dark shape, quick, low to the ground, darted between 2 wrecked sedans. Move, she barked. Get them inside, now. They ran, with Malik helping Ross carry the unconscious woman while Tyra kept pace, eyes wide with terror. A groan echoed behind them, low and guttural. Then another. More. The kind of sound that made the skin crawl and the stomach twist. The dead were coming. From alleys, from sewers, from beneath rusted bus frames, they surged, as if they'd been waiting. As if they knew. Don't stop. Erin shouted, her lungs burning. They reached the outer wall just as the first infected came into view, bloated, twitching things with glazed-over eyes and broken limbs that didn't stop moving. Jackson swung his axe, clearing space, while Malik banged on the gate. Maya. Open up. From the other side, bolts clicked and wood scraped. The gate cracked open, just enough for one person at a time. Go! Go! Jackson shoved Ross and the girl through, then helped Alina stumble in. Malik followed, breath ragged. Erin fired a shot behind them, then another, the last one in her magazine. Then she backed in and slammed the gate just as two infected slammed into the other side. The survivors inside stared in disbelief. Whispers filled the air. New faces. More mouths. But also, more hope. Tyra stared at the small crowd. You're all really alive? Erin nodded, chest heaving. So are you. Welcome to the Forgotten Zone. Jackson turned toward Maya. Double the patrols. Triple the watch. If the dead are getting closer, we don't have much time. Above them, the sky darkened again. The storm hadn't passed. It had only just begun. The gates closed with a final, heavy thud. Wood, steel, and salvaged car doors groaned as bolts locked into place. For a moment, everything was still. Then the pounding started, rotting fists slamming against the barrier like thunder in reverse. The dead didn't stop. Not because they were angry. Not because they could think. They just were, mindless, endless, inevitable. Inside the gym-turned shelter, the atmosphere had changed. The three newcomers sat on the floor near the entrance, catching their breath while Maya scanned them with a handheld UV wand repurposed to detect fever. No signs of infection, at least not the kind that showed up immediately. Tyra clung to her mother's hand as Alina administered N4. Ross, quiet and wide-eyed, looked around at the faces of strangers trying to look calm but failing. You said it was safe here, Ross whispered. Erin answered, kneeling beside him. It's safer. That's all we ever promise. Outside, the groans turned into scraping. Something dragged along the wall, claws or bones or broken fingernails. It was hard to tell anymore. Jackson pulled Erin aside. His voice was low. They didn't lead the horde. The horde followed. That's a problem. You think they were being tracked? I think we're not alone out there anymore. Erin looked toward the barricade. We need to know what they were running from. Across the gym, Malik helped Tyra drink from a cracked water bottle. He offered a tired smile. You're safe now. She stared at him for a moment, then glanced toward the windows. No one's ever safe. He didn't argue. Later that night, as the younger survivors slept beneath patched blankets and flickering emergency lights, Ross sat with Jackson and Erin in the back room near the old generator. They weren't just infected, Ross said quietly. They were organized. Jackson's brow furrowed. What do you mean? They weren't wandering like before. They moved together. Followed our trail, circled us, tried to cut us off near the southern bridge. Erin leaned forward. That's not possible. They don't think. They just react. Ross shook his head. Then explained why one of them tried to drag my wife away instead of just attacking. Like it was separating her from me. A chill passed through the room. There were whispers about this before, Erin murmured. Outposts that fell too fast. Groups disappearing with no signs of a fight. Maybe we didn't believe them because believing means this thing is evolving. Jackson stood, jaw tight. Whether they're learning or not, they're pressing against the walls. We need to reinforce every gate. Double lookouts. And no one goes out without escort. Ross hesitated, then added, "There's something else." They both looked at him. "Before we got here, we saw a drone." Silence. Aaron blinked. "Military?" "Didn't look like it. It hovered above us for 20 seconds. Then it zipped off east. But right after that, the dead showed up." Jackson leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Someone's watching." Aaron stood. "We need answers. Tomorrow, we search the east side. Something's out there." The next morning brought quiet skies but uneasy hearts. Jackson assembled a search team. Aaron, Malik, and Maya. Alina, still recovering, stayed behind to monitor the new arrivals. Tyra refused to leave her mother's side, and Ross volunteered to help with perimeter duty. As the group headed east, the world felt different. Not just abandoned. Not just ruined. It felt monitored. They moved past skeletal buildings and crumbling alleyways, each footstep echoing louder than the last. Then Maya held up a fist and crouched. "There," she whispered, pointing toward an office tower with shattered windows. On the rooftop, a faint glint. Not sunlight. Metal. The three crept forward, entering the building from a broken side door. Inside, paper fluttered through the air like lost birds. Cubicles stood like tombs. Desks still had mugs and framed photos. Life had ended mid-sentence here. They climbed to the top floor. The door to the roof was slightly ajar. Aaron eased it open. Outside, the wind returned. Cool. Sharp. And in the center of the roof, something waited. A tripod. A small black drone sat nestled on top, blinking a pale green. A motion-activated camera turned slowly toward them. Maya cursed. "It's still active." Aaron approached carefully. "Military?" "No markings. But this thing's broadcasting." She checked the signal. Her screen lit up. "Encrypted," she said. "But it's sending footage somewhere. Live." Malik looked over the edge. "Why would someone spy on us?" Aaron stared at the horizon, then whispered, "Maybe it's not about spying. Maybe it's about control." Behind them, a loud click snapped through the air. They turned. A figure in black stood at the door. No groans. No rot. Just a man. Breathing. Alive. And aiming a gun straight at them. "Step away from the drone." The gun didn't waver. Aaron, standing nearest to the drone, slowly raised her hands. Malik froze mid-step, eyes darting toward the figure in black who now blocked their exit. Maya didn't speak, her fingers clenched around her tablet, heart pounding hard enough to drown out the wind. The man was tall, wrapped in tactical gear that looked far too clean for someone who'd been living in the dead zone. His boots were polished. His face was hidden beneath a dark helmet and a mirrored visor. No insignia. No patch. Just the cold gleam of authority. "I said," his voice came through a speaker built into the helmet, calm and distorted, "step away from the drone." Aaron didn't move. "We're not here to steal anything. We saw the drone, thought it might help us. Our people are starving. Your people are being watched. That drone is government property." Maya frowned. "Whose government? The one that collapsed 5 years ago?" The figure didn't flinch. "Some systems never shut down. We just adapt." Malik's grip tightened on his weapon, but Aaron subtly waved him off. "Why are you watching us?" she asked, stepping slightly in front of Maya. The man exhaled, an audible breath distorted by the helmet mic. "Because you weren't supposed to survive. None of you were." The words dropped like stone in water. "What did you just say?" Aaron asked, eyes narrowing. "Protocol 13, the man continued. When the outbreak reached Phase 4, containment zones were abandoned. The Forgotten Zone wasn't just a result of chaos, it was an intentional cutoff. You were meant to be lost. Forgotten. Malik's voice cracked. That's not containment. That's a death sentence. No, the man replied. That was mercy. He stepped forward slightly, keeping the gun raised. But you didn't die. You formed groups. You signaled. You resisted. That's problematic. Maya's hand hovered near her gear. So what now? You wipe us out for surviving? A long silence. I'm not here to kill you, the man finally said. I'm here to evaluate. Evaluate what? Aaron demanded. He tilted his head. Viability. The infected are changing. So are you. Some groups have adapted in unexpected ways. Your zone is one of 3 left. And the most stable. We're not a lab test, she snapped. No, he agreed. But you might be a solution. He tapped a device on his wrist. The drone's blinking green light turned blue. It lifted slowly into the air and zipped off into the morning sky. I've logged your location, he said. And your strength. Erin narrowed her eyes. Why would you care? Because something worse is coming. And your little zone may be humanity's last functioning control group. Maya whispered, you're experimenting on us. No. I'm trying to determine if you're worth saving. That's when Erin had enough. In one swift move, she lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the tripod and using it to knock the barrel of the man's weapon aside. Malik raised his own rifle, shouting, drop it. The man moved with shocking speed, twisting Erin around and pinning her arm behind her back before anyone else could act. You're not ready, he growled, his voice suddenly full of anger. Still clinging to rules, to empathy. That's why you'll lose. Then why are you here, she hissed. To give you a warning. He let her go and stepped back toward the doorway. South of this zone, about 30 clicks out, there's a site. Buried deep. Military research base. One of the last. And it's been breached. Erin rubbed her shoulder, eyes locked on him. What does that mean? The man paused. It means the infected you've seen so far aren't the end. Then he was gone, slipping down the stairs like a ghost in daylight. Back at the gym, Jackson listened to the report with his jaw clenched and his arms crossed. The community was silent as Erin laid out everything, the drone, the man in black, the buried facility to the south. Ross looked pale. He said we weren't supposed to survive. That they left us here to die. Tyra clutched her mother's hand, her eyes glassy with quiet fear. Why would anyone do that? Jackson didn't have an answer. No one did. Alina, leaning on a cane, broke the silence. If that base is real, and it's been breached, we're not just facing the infected anymore. We're facing something worse. Malik looked toward Erin. You're not thinking of going there, are you? She didn't speak for a long time. Then she finally said, if something new is out there, stronger, faster, smarter, we need to know. If we wait for it to come to us, we die. Maya looked at Jackson. We don't even know if it's still standing. No, Jackson said quietly. But if that man was telling the truth, then that base holds answers. And maybe, a way to fight back. Outside the gates, the dead still scratched at the walls. But now the survivors inside had a decision to make. Stay hidden, and hope. Or go south, and risk everything. Dawn broke cold and colorless over the forgotten zone, casting long gray shadows over the half-collapsed rooftops. A heavy silence pressed over the gym like a second roof, thicker than fear, heavier than hunger. For the first time in months, the survivors had something new to wrestle with, purpose. They had lived so long reacting, enduring. But now, they had a choice, an objective. And it scared them more than any moaning horde ever could. Jackson stood before a wall-sized map in the meeting room, drawn on tattered brown sheets of wrapping paper. Lines marked the limits of known territory. Circles marked previous scavenging routes. And now, a red X glared from the southern edge, 30 kilometers into dead ground, far beyond their regular radius. Erin traced the path with her finger. If we stick to the canal route, we can avoid the denser zones. It's slower, but safer. Nothing's safe past the water plant, Malik said, arms folded. Last team that went there never came back. Maya adjusted the strap of her gear pack. They weren't looking for answers. They were looking for diesel. This is different. Is it? Ross asked from the corner, rubbing his arms against the cold. Because walking into a place some mystery soldier called breach doesn't sound like hope. It sounds like suicide. Alina, sitting with her crutch beside her, nodded. We have to weigh this carefully. If we send our best fighters, we weaken the zone. If we don't send anyone, we stay blind. Jackson stared at the map for a long moment. We can't send everyone. But we need to send someone. Eventually, the decision was made. A scouting party, small, light, fast. Erin would lead. Malik would navigate. Maya would manage tech and recon. And to everyone's surprise, Ross volunteered to go. I've walked farther than 30 clicks through worse, he said, his voice low. And if there's a chance my daughter won't have to grow up in this prison, I'll take it. At dawn the next morning, the four of them stood at the edge of the gate. The sky was smeared with red clouds, and the wind had begun to carry that strange dry electricity again, like the earth itself was warning them. Tyra hugged her father tightly. Please come back. He smiled, then kissed her forehead. If I don't, promise me you'll stay strong. For Mom. She nodded, but her eyes didn't blink. The gate groaned open. The world beyond looked just as broken as ever. But now, it also looked unknown. They moved quickly at first, sticking to overgrown alleyways, ducking through backyards, crossing dry canals. The cityscape slowly gave way to rusted fences, scorched fields, and dead overpasses. The silence out here was different than back home. More complete. More observed. No infected appeared for the first 5 kilometers. No signs of life, or death, except scorched earth and collapsed buildings. Feels too quiet, Malik muttered. Too open, Erin agreed. By midday, they reached the broken water treatment plant, the last known border of safe scouting territory. What they saw beyond it stopped them cold. A wall of old vehicles stretched across the road, cars, buses, armored trucks, stacked together like a makeshift blockade. Some were blackened by fire. Others had dried blood on the inside windows. Maya pulled out her field scope and scanned. No movement. Erin knelt and studied the tire marks in the dirt. These weren't abandoned. They were positioned. Someone built this. Ross ran his hand along a bus frame. Then where are they now? They moved through a narrow break in the barricade, weapons raised. On the other side lay a different world. Unlike the ruin they'd come from, this area looked almost untouched. No signs of chaos. No burn marks. No corpses. Just silence and strange stillness, as if death had walked here and chosen to spare the ground. They pressed forward. At the 12th kilometer, they found it. A metal sign buried in a tangle of vines and brush, its letters barely visible. Ravenwood Research Complex, U.S. Biodefense Division. Maya stepped forward, brushing the vines away. The gate behind it had long since rusted open. Fences lay flat. Beyond them, 3 squat buildings sat like waiting beasts, half-buried, steel-jawed, and dark. Erin tightened her grip on her knife. This is it. Ross stared at the silent compound. Looks like the end of the world had a headquarters. Malik frowned. Or maybe it started here. They approached slowly. Every crunch of gravel underfoot felt too loud. Every gust of wind felt loaded with questions. The first building was empty, just offices and labs stripped bare. The second had claw marks on the walls. Blood. Broken glass. And a locked vault door, pried open from the inside. Erin's stomach sank. Maya whispered, whatever broke out of here, wasn't human anymore. Ross pointed down a side corridor. Power cables. Recently moved. They followed them. Downward. Into the dark. At the bottom of the stairs, they found something they weren't ready for. A holding room. Cameras still glowing red. Glass cages. Restraint chairs. And one flickering monitor, displaying a paused video feed. Inside the feed, a subject, tall, pale, eyes black as night, staring directly into the camera. Then the screen flashed. Subject X escaped. And the lights went out. The power blinked out, plunging the underground chamber into absolute blackness. For a split second, no one breathed. Then Malik's voice cut through the dark, low and tight. Flashlights. Now. For beams snapped on, scattering through the dust-filled air. The glow trembled as the lights shook in their hands. The room was worse in partial light, glass shards scattered across the floor, deep claw marks dug into concrete, steel restraints torn like fabric. Whatever had escaped here didn't just break out, it tore through engineered walls meant to hold monsters. Maya stood frozen in front of the flickering monitor. The image was gone now. Static fuzzed across the screen like white noise whispering secrets. But she'd seen the eyes, deep, intelligent, terrifyingly calm. What was that thing? Malik whispered. Ross stepped slowly toward the nearest shattered containment pod. Not a normal infected. Aaron moved beside him. It looked aware. Ross nodded. Predator eyes. Not hungry, hunting. A sudden noise snapped them all around. Tap tap. Something moved overhead. Slow. Heavy. Not a rat. Not the wind. Upstairs, Aaron breathed. They backed into the hallway, weapons raised, flashlights sweeping the dark. The facility above was now dead silent. No more lights. No humming from old power lines. Only the creaking of old vents and the constant echo of their own fear bouncing off concrete walls. As they reached the stairwell, Maya hissed, "Stop." She crouched, shining her beam on the floor. Tracks. Not shoe prints, bare feet. Elongated. 4 toes. Deep, sunken impressions in the dust, spaced far apart. "It's fast," she whispered. Ross pointed toward the exit. "We need to get back to the surface. Now." They ascended quickly, hearts thudding louder with every step. At the top, they emerged into faint sunlight. The air outside felt thinner, like the oxygen itself had changed. But the peace didn't last. From the far side of the research complex, something shrieked. Not human. Not infected. Something worse. "Move!" Aaron shouted. They ran, across cracked pavement and twisted fences, through patches of tall grass now heavy with dew. The shriek came again, this time closer, sharper. It wasn't calling out. It was tracking. Ross turned mid-stride to look back, and froze. Just beyond the fence line, standing perfectly still, was a tall figure. Unclothed, skin pale and tight over long limbs. Its head tilted slightly. Watching. Malik saw it next. "Is that?" "No time." Aaron grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. "Run." But the figure didn't chase. It only watched. And smiled. They didn't stop running until the complex was miles behind them. When they finally dropped behind a rusted-out train yard for cover, they collapsed into silence, lungs burning, sweat dripping into their eyes. Maya broke the quiet. "That wasn't a normal infected." "No," Aaron said, still catching her breath. "That was Subject X." "Did you see its face?" Ross whispered. "It knew we were there." Malik leaned his head back against a railcar. "It let us go." That realization hit harder than anything else. The thing could have reached them. It was faster. It was stronger. But it didn't strike. It observed. Maya wiped dust from her tablet and powered it on. Somehow, the last feed from the drone earlier had synced a timestamp. She checked it. There's more, she muttered. Before we lost the signal, it recorded a message. Aaron leaned in. What message? Maya opened the file. Static. Then audio, distorted, low. A voice, calm, slow. Observation complete. Subject X now autonomous. Intelligence confirmed. Aggression, conditional. Zone Echo 9 viability, medium. Engage only if provoked. Control protocol terminated. Malik stared at the screen. That wasn't military. No, Maya agreed. That was a lab log. An AI system or someone left behind to monitor these things. Ross stood slowly, hands trembling. This Subject X, it's not just smarter. It's loose. And it's choosing when to kill. Aaron was silent. Then she said what none of them wanted to say out loud. It's studying us. They returned to the Forgotten Zone 2 days later, staggering through the main gate as Jackson and a team met them with drawn weapons. The moment they saw Aaron and the others still standing, relief flooded every face. Report, Jackson said quickly, his voice tight. Inside, with everyone gathered, Aaron delivered it all, the base, the drone, the surveillance, and the thing they found, or that found them. Ross stepped forward last. Subject X is loose. It's not part of the Horde. It's something worse. And it knows where we live. Gasps broke out. Some began to panic. Others stood in numb silence. Maya raised her voice. We're not defenseless. If it's watching, then it sees how we survive. It sees that we're organized. Alive. Human. But that also makes us a threat, Jackson said grimly. Aaron nodded. We need to prepare. More than ever before. Tyra looked up from the crowd, her voice barely a whisper. Can it be stopped? No one answered. Because deep down, they all feared the truth. Subject X wasn't hunting. It was waiting. The Forgotten Zone held its breath. In the days following the team's return, the gym transformed from a shelter into a fortress. Scrap metal, furniture, and reinforced doors turned the perimeter into a maze of layered defense. Watch posts were doubled. Rotations shortened. Every adult capable of standing held a weapon, and even the children were taught the difference between a warning shot and a final one. But no one said it out loud, they weren't preparing for another swarm of infected. They were preparing for it. Subject X. It hadn't been seen since that day at the base, but its silence weighed heavier than a horde. It had let them go. And that made it more dangerous than anything they'd ever faced. This wasn't a random outbreak. This was strategy. And now, every shadow felt like a test. Aaron stood on the rooftop watchpoint, eyes locked on the far ridge where the tree line met the ruined city. The wind carried a dry scent, no decay, just stillness. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Maya joined her, holding a makeshift drone controller. We did another aerial sweep this morning. No movement. Not even a bird. Too quiet, Aaron murmured. Maya nodded. Every time we send a drone out beyond range, we lose signal within minutes. It's jamming us. X? Maybe. Or someone helping it. Aaron exhaled, her jaw tightening. What are we dealing with, Maya? Some weapon? A mutant? Maya stared at the controller for a long moment before answering. I think we're dealing with what comes after the infected. Inside the center, Jackson met with the rest of the leadership. Alina leaned heavily on her cane, her wound healing slower than expected. Ross stood in the corner, arms crossed. Even Tyra sat nearby, no longer seen as just a child, but as someone who had lived too much too fast. Jackson's voice was low and grim. If Subject X attacks, it won't be a swarm. It'll be surgical. We can't defend against something that thinks like us, but moves like one of them. Then we stop thinking like defenders, Ross said. And strike first. The room went still. You want to attack it? Alina asked. Ross nodded. We don't wait. We find it. Track it. Cut it off before it learns more. It let us go, Maya said from the door. It could have killed us, but it didn't. Maybe that means something. Or maybe, Ross replied, we're not the target. Yet. That night, the first signs came. Just after midnight, North Watch, a high lookout post outside the gym, went dark. No radio signal. No answer to flares. Jackson, Malik, and Aaron sprinted to the tower. What they found turned their blood cold. No sign of infected. No blood. Just the sentry's weapon on the ground, and the man's jacket, folded neatly on the chair. Malik turned away, his face pale. It's sending a message. Aaron picked up the jacket and held it tightly. Then we send one back. By morning, a plan was in motion. Ross, Malik, and 2 volunteers geared up to sweep the northern ruins, where they suspected Subject X was operating from. Aaron stayed behind to coordinate defense. Maya worked on a signal scrambler, hoping to block the drone interference. As Ross and the team passed through the outer gates, something caught Malik's eye, a message scrawled in charcoal across a crumbled wall. Not alone. Not the only one. He turned to Ross. What does that mean? Ross didn't answer. But his pace quickened. The northern ruins were silent as the grave. The search team moved through broken school buildings, overgrown fields, and rusting buses. Malik led with a scanner repurposed from hospital tech. It blinked softly, monitoring heat signatures. Suddenly, it beeped. Ross raised a fist. Hold. They crouched behind a crumbling office block. The scanner pulsed again. Heat. Human-shaped. One figure. Still. Malik whispered, got it. They moved slowly through the hall. And then, there it was. A person, seated cross-legged in the middle of the lobby. Unmoving. Hooded. Alive. Ross approached carefully. Are you hurt? The figure raised its head. A woman. Pale. Eyes strange. Calm. You shouldn't be here, she said. Who are you? Ross asked. I'm like you, she said. But I didn't escape. What do you mean? She stood slowly. Subject X isn't one. There are several. I was part of the experiment, before they perfected it. Malik's voice cracked. You're saying there are more? She nodded. Then the wall behind them exploded. Back at the zone, alarms blared. The outer wall had been breached. But not by a horde. By one. Subject X moved like a shadow on fire, tearing through barricades, disarming traps, bypassing the obvious. It didn't kill indiscriminately. It targeted. 3 defenders were down before anyone got a shot off. The rest scattered. Inside the gym, Aaron grabbed a flare gun and shouted, hold the line. The blast of light lit up the courtyard, and there it was. Standing in the open. Still. Watching. And smiling. Then it disappeared again, into the smoke, into the chaos. But now they knew. It was no longer testing them. It was starting the war. Part 8 title, The 101. Smoke still hung in the air as the flames died down around the gym's outer wall. The barricades were torn apart. The northern watch post was in ruins. Blood marked the concrete, 3 defenders dead, 5 wounded. But Subject X was gone. Aaron stood in the courtyard, panting, gripping the flare gun with shaking hands. Around her, survivors regrouped, dragging the injured back inside. She could still feel the thing's presence, like its eyes had carved into her skin. It hadn't come to destroy the zone. Not tonight. It had come to warn them. Inside the shelter, Jackson stood over the central map, eyes wide, jaw locked. We underestimated it, he muttered. We treated it like a monster. But it's playing a game. And it's winning, Maya added, lowering a cracked radio to the table. Ross's team hasn't checked in. No signal. Just static. Tyra sat beside her unconscious mother, arms wrapped around her knees. It's picking us off. No, Aaron said, stepping into the room. It's choosing who deserves to survive. Everyone looked at her. She pointed to the map. Subject X isn't just hunting. It's measuring. Watching how we respond. How we fight. How we protect each other. It's trying to understand what makes us human. And if it figures that out? Malik asked from the doorway, pale and covered in soot. Then it knows how to end us, Jackson said grimly. Maya stood. We still have one advantage. We're a community. It's alone. Not anymore, Malik said quietly. There's another. A woman. We found her up north. She said she was an earlier subject. Everyone froze. Where is she now? Aaron asked. Malik's voice faltered. She didn't make it. The wall exploded. She tried to warn us, said X is the perfected version. The final phase. Jackson looked around the room at the gathered survivors. If this is a final phase, then we make our stand final too. He pointed to the map. Every escape tunnel. Every blind spot. We seal them. We create a kill zone. One entry. No exits. Aaron nodded. We don't wait for X to strike again. We lure it. The plan formed in hours. The survivors converted the center of the zone into a layered trap. Barricades made of cars, nets laced with barbed wire, motion-triggered flares, and pulleys that would drop debris from rooftops. Old fuel drums were repurposed into makeshift fire bombs. Maya reprogrammed their remaining drone to bait Subject X with heat signals. They named it Operation 100 Fire. Everyone had a role. Tyra ran comms. Alina prepared the injured. Malik scouted the perimeter with Aaron. And Jackson led from the ground. By nightfall, the trap was set. They only needed the enemy to walk into it. The first sign came at midnight. The drone feed blinked. A motion trigger flashed near the north ridge. Then silence. Then, a shape. Moving fast. Too fast. Subject X appeared on the northern rooftops, leaping from one building to the next, its silhouette barely visible in the darkness. But it wasn't charging. It was circling. Watching. It had seen the trap. Hold positions, Aaron said into the radio. Don't engage. X moved again, this time near the east barricade. Then west. It was testing every point. Like a chess player mapping the board before striking. Then it made a mistake. It stepped on a tripwire hidden beneath a tarp. A flare exploded upward, bathing the street in red light. Now! Jackson shouted. Fire bombs dropped from the roofs. Metal cages slammed down behind the target. Aaron fired the ignition charge into the barricade. The trap snapped shut. Subject X was surrounded by flames and steel. For the first time, it hesitated. Then it roared. A sound not of rage, but pain. It slammed into the barriers, once, twice, until sparks flew. But it couldn't break out. Malik triggered the EMP device Maya had rigged to the drone's power core. The explosion shattered the drone and sent a jolt into the trap's wiring. It pulsed through the steel. Subject X collapsed. Still. Smoke rose. The courtyard went silent. For a moment, just a moment, it felt like a victory. Then it moved. Not fast this time. Slowly. Unnaturally. Its eyes opened, blazing. Its body twitched, but it stood. Wounded. Burned. But alive. It stepped forward, and locked eyes with Aaron. She didn't blink. She raised her rifle, but didn't fire. Instead, she spoke. You want to know what makes us different? It's not survival. It's sacrifice. Then she threw her weapon aside. Subject X hesitated. In that moment, Maya detonated the final charge, buried beneath the concrete. The ground erupted. Flames engulfed the courtyard. When the smoke cleared, all that remained of Subject X was ash. The next day, the Forgotten Zone stood, scarred but whole. 97 survivors. 3 lost in the final stand. They built a new wall. Planted crops. Repaired the solar tower. And on the wall, above the gate, Maya etched a single phrase in steel. We are more than what hunts us. Because in the end, it wasn't Subject X that defined them. It was how they faced it. Together. The end.